Hi folks, Mr. O'Callaghan here, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to answer a two-source question at Higher. I've got my stopwatch started. I'm going to try and get this video to come in at under 10 minutes to save you a bit of time in your lives. Just to kind of kick us off, it's a two-source question. You've got 23 minutes in the exam to do it, which is the same amount of time that you have for How Fully questions. Try and be aware of that time when you're answering the questions in the exam, because as I'm sure I've said to you umpteen times before, if you go over by any amount of time at all, you've got to find that time somewhere else in the paper. So what I've got for you is to kind of just chat you through how to do it, and I've got a model answer from the 2022 paper to chat you through as well. So this question sometimes gets confused by people with a source comparison question at National 5. It is 100% not that. If anything, I would consider it to be a bit like two How Fully questions, because you get two sources of information, as we'll see in a moment or two, for you to have a look at. Now, you need to deal with each source one at a time. There are two things that you need to do in each source, and doing these things correctly will gain you 3 marks. A lot of you are very, very familiar with quoting and explaining. In each source, you can quote and explain twice, and then you need to give something called the overall viewpoint, which is basically trying to figure out what the source is actually overall talking about from the information that we have to hand. So I would do the first source, do your quotes and explains in your overall viewpoint, move on to the second source, do your quotes and explains and then your overall viewpoint. And then the last thing you need to do is to do your own knowledge about what the sources do not talk about. You can do that up to 6 times. Obviously, that gives you 12 marks. If on a 10-mark question, you can't get 12 marks. You are capped at 10. But if you have time to do 6 of your own knowledge points, it means that you have a bit of leeway. And if you get anything wrong in the source interpretation part or the overall viewpoint part, you can pick up the marks in your own knowledge instead. Take your time with this. Do one source at a time. And for your own knowledge, make sure that you're talking about things that are in neither source. I have seen people kind of go, well, one source doesn't say anything about this, and then you look and kind of go, well, okay, you're right, it doesn't, but the other source does, therefore you can't get the mark. So be very, very careful when you go with this. And then just to confirm what I've just said to you, so do your overall viewpoint and then quote and explain twice in relation to the question, and make sure you quote fully. I'm afraid there's no shortcuts when it comes to quoting. You do have to quote fully. It is just copying out, and I appreciate it can take some time, but it is something that you need to do. So do first source first, do the second source second, and then go on and do your own knowledge. Alternative, if you wanted to flip that, you could do your own knowledge part first and then go on and deal with the sources. It's up to you, but just make sure you follow the structure and the process of what you're being asked to do fully. And I'm just going to change my screens and have a look at the example question I want to talk to you about, which, as I said, is from the 2022 paper. You may have seen this before. I'll try and get this on screen so you can maybe pause it. Source C is from Joe Perry. We've met him a few times before. He's got a few sources on our course. And source C is from Mary Edward, who we're seeing a little bit more of in our course as well. And our question is, how much do sources C and D reveal about different interpretations of the contribution of immigrants to the Scottish economy? So this is an issue 4 question. So we are looking at the Scottish economy here, which is one of the kind of strands of issue 4. So make sure you understand the question first of all. And as it talks about the Scottish economy, we are looking really to do with the business side of things or the financial side of things. And we're talking about really the contribution of immigrants. So make sure you understand the question first of all when you're answering these things. Just remind you to use the sources and recalled knowledge. So if you look at source C first of all, so we've got our overall viewpoint. So immigrants contributed to the Scottish economy in Glasgow as entrepreneurs by setting up their own businesses, which is really what the source is about. It's important to note when you do the overall viewpoint and the explanations of your quotes that you're likely to have it word for word as what it is in the marking scheme, but don't let that put you off. Obviously, it's your interpretation of these things. If you are in the ballpark area of what the marking scheme say, they will of course give you the mark. If you're completely wrong, unfortunately they won't. So just look out for that side of things. Our first quote, I'm not going to go through this line by line. Our first quote talks about the ice cream shops and the fish and chip shops, profitable, owned by Italian families. And then talks about the bars. Remember, we had the hokey pokey men gun as well. So that's our full quote. It is quite a big quote, but it is just copying stuff out. So hopefully you're able to do that. And then we have our explanation. So this shows the Italians contribute to the Scottish economy by introducing successful businesses such as ice cream and fish and chip shops to Scotland. Fairly straightforward explanation, but you notice that it does give an answer to the question by talking about the contribution to the Scottish economy. And just to kind of bring to your attention, the overall viewpoint talks about immigrants overall, but the source itself is about Italians. So just make sure, or this source itself is about Italians. Just make sure that you're kind of looking at the bigger picture rather than just kind of zoning in and talking about what Italians contribute. Actually, because our next source talks about Irish people as well. So it's overall talking about immigrants. The second source, you can have a read there for yourself, just about talks about the contribution providing hairdressers and barbers. And you remember the school of hairdressers was opened up in Glasgow in the 1920s. So that's 3 marks for that source. You've got your overall viewpoint, and you've got 2 quotes and explains. Then we got source D, and we got the contribution to the Scottish economy through heavy industry and manual labour. Again, you won't have this word for word, but try and kind of pick out what the source is talking about. Again, we've got a fairly short quote for this one. Construction tunnel large by Irish immigrants. And then we talked about the word navvies, which a word that you met at the very, very start of the course. Scottish Side Improvement Transport Links in Scotland. And then we've got source D also says, and talk about coal mining. And are able to adjust to any labour and occupation, and therefore essential to the development of the Scottish mining industry, which they were. Often we kind of associate the Lithuanians with the mining industry, but actually the Irish were very involved in the mining industry in Ayrshire and North Lanarkshire as well. So that's the quote and explain and the overall viewpoint. So in theory, we have 6 marks on board just now, so we've got 4 more to play for. I've given more than 4 examples here. And I've lifted them from the marking scheme just to bring to your attention that all the examples here are worth 1 mark, but I just want you to look at the detail of it and look for the fact that sometimes it mentions things like the contribution to the Scottish economy as well. Up here, we have got our first example, which means I've put that there and I shouldn't have done, but anyway, I'm sure you'll figure that out. Sources failed to mention other contributions of immigrants to the Scottish economy. So it's a nice link sentence, gets you no marks whatsoever, but it kind of just links in quite nicely. So we've got stuff here. Now, we haven't mentioned navvies before, but again, they're in the marking scheme to talk about railroads that opened up economic opportunities to Scottish businesses, because this is about the economy. Then we've Sir Thomas Lipton, who we've not really talked about much, but I know some of you do know who he is. And again, we've got a link to the Scottish economy. And then we've got a few other examples to do with the Protestant Irish. So we've got one talking about the weaving trade and the other talking about shipbuilding, the iron industry. And it names a firm, Baird's, who you do have a record in your notes. It's very important to try and be specific in your example. So throwing in an example like Baird's makes that example much, much stronger. I think if you just stopped at shipbuilding and the iron industry, you might not get the mark, but by throwing in Baird's, you do get the mark. The next one is one that you're very familiar with, I think. It's just remember numbers about the Italian cafes, 89 to 336 over the course of 2 years. And then it links in the fact that they've got they didn't really kind of put pressure on the Scottish job market because they had their own businesses, but also meant that a lot of Scots didn't get jobs in those businesses. And then finally, we've got Jewish immigrants, and we've got some of the jobs or some of the businesses that Jewish immigrants set up: tobacco industry, tail industry, jewelers, and pawnbrokers. Remember, we had a source to do with that, and we had all these jobs kind of listed in there as well. Again, it's important to give examples. I think we do have a note of the Goldberg somewhere. If you want to expand about the tobacco industry, you talk about Jewish tobacco owners bringing over people from other countries to kind of do the work as well. So each of those examples gets 1 mark. Apologies for having that there and not there, but hopefully you'll figure that out. I'm just about to approach the 10-minute mark, but hopefully reading through these examples have helped. If you're not too sure about anything, please post in Teams or contact your teacher, who'll be happy to kind of chat through with you. That's all. Thanks for your time.